part out because I didn't have what he exactly wanted me to title. I know that we'd like to do titles. I don't know. Compassionate Christ, I guess, would be a good one for what we're going to talk about tonight. So let's flip over first to Luke chapter 7 is where we will start tonight. Oh yeah, man, I always panic about this. I think about it all day long. Got to turn that bad boy on. Mom? Am on? Flips. Power button. Too big for that. We on now? Good? Awesome. All right. Okay, we'll start here in verse 11. And it came to pass the day after that he went into a city called Nain, and many of his disciples went with him, and much people. Now when he came nigh to the gate of the city, behold, there was a dead man carried out, the only son of his mother, and she was a widow. And much people of the city was with her. And when the Lord saw her, he had compassion on her, and said unto her, Weep not. And he came and touched the bier, the open casket, and they that bare him stood still, and he said, Young man, I say unto thee, arise. And he that was dead sat up and began to speak, and he delivered him to his mother. And there came a fear on all, and they glorified God, saying, That a great prophet is risen up among us, and that God had visited his people. So this here was the original portion of what I thought I was supposed to speak on tonight. And I had some parallels I was going to draw on it. And what really spoke to me about this is the fact that Christ had no intent of meeting this woman in his life. He was going along on his way to another place. And there in verse 12 it says, Now when he came nigh to the gate of the city, behold, there was a dead man carried out, the only son of his mother, and she was a widow. So she had no husband. Her husband was dead, and now she's lost her only son. And she's walking along, and there at the end it said, and much people of the city was with her. So this was they were somebody semi-popular in the town, or they was just from a big family, but there was much people of the city with them as they're walking out. And verse 13 is what caught me on what I was going to really talk about tonight. It said, And when the Lord saw her, he had compassion on her, and said unto her, Weep not. So what Christ is going along his daily life and saw this woman broken, a widow, has now lost her son. She's walking out behind his casket, and Christ took the time to look over and have compassion on her, and went over and said, I can help this situation, and reaches out and he said, Young man, arise, I say unto thee, arise. And he sat up. First off, that got everybody's attention. But Christ took that time out of his day for whatever else he was going to do. He had just healed the centurion's servant, and he was getting ready to, and Luke here, this is the only place in the Bible where this story is recorded, is in Luke. We have no other Bible verses to compare this to. And so, where he said that to her, and weep not, I thought how wonderful that was that Christ would say, weep not. I got this, And so many times in our lives, we go along, and we get in whatever struggle we get into our lives, or whatever monumentous thing that's happening in our life, and Christ comes up and he says, weep not. Kind of like whenever he gets up in the boat and says, peace be still. It's that kind of the same thing here. And so Christ delivered her son back to her. She had lost her son, and he delivered him back. Had that compassion enough to be able to do that for him. So that's kind of the introduction, which has nothing to do with what we're getting ready. I mean, it does, but what's coming here in a minute is totally off of this, went a completely different way. So let's pray. Lord, I just pray that with what we're getting ready to get into, Lord, that you'll just use me however you're wanting me to. This is not, that it's not what I had originally thought I was supposed to do, but you have different plans, so I hope that it's a blessing to whomever you have it here to be a blessing for. I pray that you'll just keep the devil at bay, and that we'll be able to hear the clear presentation of whatever you have for us. These things in your name we pray. Amen. So, as I was originally thinking about this, I thought about times that Christ was compassionate towards others. There's a lot of times he does things for people, but he's really kind of in that in that master point in his life whenever he does a lot of those. A lot of people come to him and, Master, please do this, or, they really came to him as that spiritual leader. And whenever he did this, while he still was that, I think that it was just kind of he broke on the inside for the pain that this mom was feeling. And I just think he said, I can make this better. And so another place where this happens, similar to this, is really where we're going to be at tonight. Whenever this was going to be the main part, I was going to spend a lot of time on this part, and then this other piece was just going to kind of show a different portion. And God said, nope, here's where you're supposed to be at. So let's flip over to John chapter 11. And I want to go through some things that the Lord showed me over the past couple days to change it this way, and hopefully it can be as a blessing to you as what it has been to me and why I think the Lord has it for us. So we'll start in verse 1 and kind of go along here. Verse 1, chapter 11 of John. Now a certain man was sick named Lazarus of Bethany, in the town of Mary and her sister Martha. It was that Mary which anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. Therefore his sister sent unto him, saying, Lord, behold, he whom thou lovest is sick. When Jesus heard that, he said, This sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God might be glorified. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. When he had heard therefore that he was sick, he abode 2 days still in the same place where he was. So Lazarus is sick. They come, they send for Jesus, their friend. And it'd be kind of like if you had a good friend that was a doctor and you wasn't feeling good. He was like, you know what? Go get the doc. I need to see him. And Jesus here says, sickness ain't unto death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God might be glorified thereby. He's like, he'd be okay. That's essentially what he said. Yeah, he ain't sick unto death. Wouldn't you love your doctor to say that? You go in there, you're like, Doc, I'll be dead tomorrow. You're fine. No, really, I'm not. Trust me, you're fine, And so Jesus was so not worried about it that he stayed there for 2 days. It said that he abode 2 days still in the same place where he was. And this is a side note on that. Many times whenever we think that we need to get into a hurry for God, over there in Psalms 23, we talked about this the other week in the teens, it says that he maketh me to lie down in green pastures. Sometimes whenever we want to get going and do something, God says, you just need to lay down. Stay right here. And he feeds us during that time. That has nothing to do with the message, but popped in there. So hopefully that's a blessing. Verse 7, Then after that saith he to his disciples, Let us go into Judea again. His disciples say unto him, Master, the Jews of late sought to stone thee, and goest thou thither again? And Jesus answered, Are there not 12 hours in the day? If any man walk in the day, he stumbleth not, because he seeth the light of this world. But if a man walketh in the night, he stumbleth, because there is no light in him. Then these things said he, and after that he said unto them, Our friend Lazarus sleepeth, but I go that I may awake him out of sleep. Then said his disciples, Lord, if he sleep, he shall do well. Howbeit Jesus spake of his death, but they thought that he had spoken of taking of rest and sleep. Then Jesus said unto them plainly, Lazarus is dead. So I thought, whenever I read this, I thought, here's Christ talking to his guys. We need to go over. Our friend Lazarus sleepeth, but I go that I may wake him out of his sleep. I don't know if he meant it as a really cool line, but it was this really cool prophetic line and all that. And then, of course, his disciples over there, he sleeps. He'll be okay, right? He's dead. I just think Christ was just kind of like, Lazarus is dead. You have to cut through for him there. But verse 15, and he said, And I am glad for your sakes that I was not there, to the intent ye may believe, nevertheless, let us go unto him. You know how many times Christ has to tell his disciples that ye may believe? They spent all this time with him, and he is constantly telling them, I do this so that you may believe, or he's showing them or explaining that to them. I think he has to do that with us a lot of times. Verse 16, Then said Thomas, which is called Didymus, unto his fellow disciples, Let us also go, that we may die with him. Then when Jesus came, he found that he had lain in the grave 4 days already. Now Bethany was nigh unto Jerusalem, about 15 furlongs off, And many of the Jews came to Martha and Mary to comfort them concerning their brother. So Lazarus died, he's in the grave, and all these Jews are coming, all their countrymen are coming to comfort them. Then Martha, as soon as she heard that Jesus was coming, went and met him, but Mary sat still in the house. Then said Martha unto Jesus, Lord, if thou hadst been here, my brother had not died. But I know that even now, whatsoever thou wilt ask of God, God will give it thee. Jesus said unto her, Thy brother shall rise again. So Christ really wasn't concerned with what was going on with Lazarus. He knew what was getting ready to happen, He didn't have to come, wasn't there really to do kind of what he had done in Nain there. This was a completely different thing. He knew exactly what was getting ready to happen here. This was his purpose to be going here. Verse 24, Martha saith unto him, I know that he shall rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Jesus said unto her, I am the resurrection and the life. He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. And whosoever liveth and believeth in me shall never die. Believest thou this? She said unto him, Yea, Lord, I believe that thou art the Christ, the Son of God, which should come up into the world. And when she had said, she went her way and called Mary her sister secretly, saying, The Master is come and calleth thee. As soon as she heard that, she arose quickly and came unto him. Now Jesus was not yet come into the town, but was in that place where Martha met him. The Jews which were come with her in the house and comforted her, when they saw Mary, that she rose up hastily and went out, followed her, saying, She goeth unto the grave to weep there. It's amazing whenever people in the world around you see you run into the church to do something, they always think it's a worldly reason. Mary was getting up to go run to Christ, to go meet Christ. And they said, oh, she's going to cry at the grave. Oh, that's so heartbreaking. And that's where their minds were at with all this. 32. Then when Mary was come where Jesus was and saw him, she fell down at his feet, saying unto him, Lord, if thou hadst been here, my brother had not died. When Jesus therefore saw her weeping, and the Jews also weeping which came with her, he groaned in the spirit and was troubled. And he said, Where have ye laid him? They said unto him, Lord, come and see. Jesus wept. Then said the Jews, Behold how he loved him. And some of them said, Could not this man which opened the eyes of the blind have caused that even this man should not have died? Jesus therefore, again groaning in himself, cometh to the grave. It was a cave, and a stone lay upon it. Jesus said, Take ye away the stone. Martha, the sister of him that was dead, saith unto him, Lord, by this time he stinketh, for he hath been dead 4 days. Jesus said unto her, Said I not unto thee, that if thou wouldest believe, thou shouldest see the glory of God? Then they took away the stone from the place where the dead was laid, and Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, Father, I thank thee that thou hast heard me, and I knew that thou hearest me always. But because of the people which stand by, I said it, that they may believe that thou hast sent me. And when he had said thus, he spoke, and when he had thus had spoken, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. And he that was dead come forth, bound hand and foot with grave clothes, and his face was bound about with a napkin. Jesus saith unto them, Loose him, and let him go. Then many of the Jews which came to Mary, and had seen the things which Jesus did, believed on him. So, the parallel that I was going to draw was the different relationships that Christ had with people. And I was really going to focus on this one in Nain, the compassion that Christ has for us whenever we're hurting. And God told me today, as I was reviewing this before coming, he said, that's not the message today. The message, God didn't know the lady in Nain, so he just comforted her quickly. But Christ was broken for the people that he knew that whenever they were weeping. And as I thought about that, there's so many things that happen in our lives that we weep over that Christ also weeps over. So I want you to look there in verse 32. Then when Mary was come where Jesus was and saw him, she fell down at his feet, saying unto him, Lord, if thou hadst been here, my brother had not died. That's pretty much the same thing Martha had said. If Christ had only been here, he wouldn't have died. When Jesus therefore saw her weeping, and the Jews also weeping which came with her, he groaned in the spirit and was troubled. He wasn't sad for what happened. He already knew what was going to happen to Lazarus. He could care less about that. He knew he was going to call him out of that grave and he was going to be okay. But he was hurt in his spirit for the pain that the people were feeling. And Jesus wept. So whenever I thought about that, I don't know why, just growing up, I always thought that he was, what, I don't know if you guys do, but I classify cries in three. There's three kinds of crying. There's like guy crying, and then there's like pretty crying and ugly crying. So like guy crying is just kind of like, it'll be okay. Yeah. And then, then there's like pretty crying. It's just kind of like, just that like pretty crying. And then there's that ugly crying that just like real like, what you're like whenever your kid it's the end of the world for him, just, So those are the three cries that I always think of just in my life. I always thought Jesus was ugly crying. I just thought whenever this happened, Jesus was just like unconsolable and all that. Well, I went and I researched, Jesus wept, and it said he silently cried. Just had tears coming down his face and was silent about it. So, like I said, I always thought until today, it clicked today, I always thought Jesus was sad because of what happened to Lazarus. Jesus didn't care about Lazarus. He knew it was going to be okay. He stayed 2 days. He wasn't worked up about it. He ain't sick unto death. He'll be all right. So Christ was coming, and Martha come, and so then I thought about this. Well, why was it different whenever Mary came? We had a different relationship with Mary. I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters, and we all have friends of our family. There's people that I am closer with that are friends with our family than what they are with my brothers or my sisters. There's people in church that I just have a closer relationship with than I do other people. And I think that Christ, whenever Martha came and was upset, I don't think Christ had the same relationship with her. I think he was like, it'll be okay. It's going to be all right. And he really ministered unto her from an authoritative way, from that master sense. And what I think he did here with Mary, whenever Mary came, and it says back there in verse 2, it was Mary that which anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. So Christ obviously had a different relationship with her. She cleaned his feet. She anointed him. And what it says here, what I think happened, here, Matt, you can be my Mary real quick. All right? I think whenever he did that, he said, it's going to be okay. Where have you laid him? And I think he held her hand as they walked. And I think that's one of the things that groaned him in the spirit. Because Mary was so distraught over this, over her dead brother, over a dead family member, whom she loved, that maybe he held her hand and he just walked with her closely, comforting her. And that's what his tears were from. Was not from, all right, that's all I need. Thank you, have a seat. They weren't from his sadness over Lazarus. It was over his friends being sad. And so here's what God showed me today. I thought about that widow woman being ecstatic that her son had been returned to her. And Christ delivered her to him to her. But I think about this, and there, verse 45 is the most important, because we don't have any record of anybody getting saved in the Nain situation. But it says that many of the Jews which came to Mary had seen the things which Jesus did, believed on him. And whenever we're doing the things that we're supposed to do, Christ will weep with us. Christ will be groaned in the spirit for us. And God will use it for the good. It was a few years ago, it was 1997, when my dad's dad passed away. And I remember just that void that left in our life. We seen him a lot, loved him, and, Christ in his infinite wisdom at that point in time was able to comfort us in the way that we needed. And I thought about that as you go through your life, how God will just minister to your needs. And as we develop that relationship, he'll do the authoritative portion for us as his children for what he did with Martha. But as we develop that close relationship with him, that sweet relationship with him, we move into that Mary section of it. He comes down and he'll hold our hand whenever we're sad, whenever we're grieved over something, a matter similar unto this, and just kind of put his arm around us and be like, it'll be okay, come on. And he'll cry those tears with us. And so, this is what the Lord told me today. In Nain, he helped out a widow who needed her son back. And that's what's done. He went on his way. But with Lazarus, he brought comfort. And so, it's going to be a short one tonight. That's why we should have sang 4 or 5 more songs. But what struck me with awe today was that my Lord, no matter what I do, the problems I bring in my life, after the last time I spoke, I said, my biggest fear is I'm going to get up here and say something boneheaded, because I say some bonehead things sometimes. And whenever I do those things, or regardless of what I do, as long as I keep my relationship sweet with the Lord and where I need to be, God is willing to come down in my time of trouble or my time of strife and comfort me, regardless of what it is. Mary, it was her brother had died. It might be that, it's whatever I went to some training not too long ago, and we were talking about students in crisis. And what may be a crisis for Matt might not be a crisis for Justin. Justin's on the backside of graduating high school. He doesn't worry about those things anymore. At least I hope you don't still worry about tests in high school anymore. But, a math test might be the end of the world for Matt. Like, I don't know, I'm going to do this, pace over. I've been there before. But that's the biggest crisis in Matt's life. There's some mornings I wake up, I cannot find my keys. And that's the largest crisis in my life, because by my size, I don't walk very far. I ain't walking all the way to school. It's going to be a rough day at school for me. But I pray, Lord, I always tell them, I realize this is something that probably you shouldn't be bothered with, but I'd really appreciate if you help me find my keys. And at even that little crisis, God is willing to reach down and help me out in that time of trouble, no matter how small that sounds, especially whenever you think about stuff going on in the world landscape. And so I guess the point that I want to convey is, as we develop that sweet relationship, that's why I always tell the kids in our teen class whenever we talk about it, whenever reading our Bible and praying, that shouldn't be something monotonous to us, because that's developing that relationship with the Lord. That's that communion with the Lord. My dad was he was not my friend growing up. He was my parent and parented me and stuff. That's kind of a foreign concept in modern America, but, now that I'm older, we just went yesterday to the state capitol. We rode down all the way and all the way back, and I enjoy those sweet conversations with him now. And I'm older, but that dynamic has changed now. And so that's what I think about whenever I think about this here is, and I try to convey that to the teens whenever we talk, is whenever we first get saved and we're first in those initial portions, God's really that father figure to us, You can do this, you can't do that, to make sure that you're living right. That's what a lot of that initial portion of your life is. But then as you develop as a Christian, it gets into that sweet communion, that, I did this today, the Lord, I tell God what I do sometimes, Hey, I was driving down the road, did you see that? Or, I'll bring it up. Lord, did you see that over there? And those are the times that I think, that's the difference between being the Mary and the Martha in the situation, I think, is developing that relationship with the Lord and being more responsive to it. Because I think Mary got more out of Christ coming than what Martha did. Well, Lazarus probably got the most out of the whole situation, but Martha's a close number 2. Or Mary, is close number 2. But, so as you read your Bible this week, think about your sweet relationship with the Lord. And I challenge you to go through and read this whole chapter's long. I was going to read the whole chapter, but it gets on to some other stuff that has nothing to do with this. People go and tattle to the Pharisees, and the Pharisees come and cause a big stink, and, it's just a whole bunch of stuff like that. But as you're going this week, think about where you're at in your life with the Lord. Are you at your Martha stage, where it's still that authoritarian, do this, don't do this? Or are you in that sweet relationship stage with the Lord, where you can have those conversations with Him and allow Him to speak to you? Let's pray. Lord, I just thank you for this day. I hope I said everything you were wanting me to say in the clearest way that I feel that you were wanting me to say it. Lord, I do thank you for the promise that you are groaned in the Spirit for us and that you weep with us. I'm thankful for the comfort that the Holy Spirit provides us in situations, Lord. And even whenever we feel that we're the only person in our world and that we just get focused on ourselves, Lord, that you're there with us. Lord, I pray that this week you'll take us throughout the remainder of the week. Allow us to be reminded of this, and as we come into contact with people, Lord, let us remember that we don't know what people are going through, and to be sensitive to what people would need. Lord, I pray that with everything coming up the remainder of the week, Lord, you'll be with families this week. Just bless them, comfort them, and